Hi, I'm Yutaka. I'm with the Horror Hour. It's a pleasure to actually be here, get to speak with you. So first off, Eros, tell me a little bit about the Radleys.
So it's a film about a family called the Radleys, and they live in suburbia. They seem really ordinary and normal, but they're harboring a dark secret, which is they're vampires. And at the beginning of our story, something pretty horrific happens. That means that the way that they've been hiding suburbia by abstaining from drinking blood is blown out of the water, and then a whole bunch of chaos ensues.
Chaos would be the correct word. When that moment happened, I like sat up. I was like, "Oh, okay, I'm locked in. I need to prepare myself for the rest of this film." Um, I loved how, as we started to see, I also loved the abstaining, the hotline. But it was the way that their characters changed, also just visually, once, like, I guess before and then after they would have, blood. Tell me about that choice, because I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, I think one of the things that really excited me about this project is that it's really a film about addiction and what happens if you deny yourself the thing that you most desire for a year, for a decade, for more than one decade. You know, what does your body crave, and then what happens when you give that thing you most crave to your body, and that sense of pleasure and requirement and the physiological effect of drinking this elixir that makes you feel incredible on top of this world was something that we talked a lot with the actors about, because
Mhm.
lots of that is in performance. You know, they transform their being not in a kind of big grotesque way, but in a meaningful human way, if you like. But we also, it's represented in costume and makeup that these characters, once they drink blood, they become glossier. Their makeup's better. They're more appealing. They're sexier. And you know, and that's one of the reasons that why I think vampire films and vampire myths is so appealing because it's about transformation. We can transform from ordinary creatures into things that are extraordinary and glossy and exotic.
Yeah, I really, I guess when I was also watching it too, it kind of was almost as while they were abstaining and they had this, I guess, idyllic life. I don't feel like they were really living at all.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because at the heart of the film, we've got Damien Lewis playing twin brothers, right?
Hmm.
And there's these twin brothers, uh, Peter, who's decided to abstain from drinking blood. They've both got the same DNA. They've both got the same flaw. They're both vampires, but one of
Hmm.
them decided to be good and curb his desires because he doesn't want to kill people. And the less he kills people and the less blood he drinks, the more moral he becomes. The other guy, Will, he's decided to yield to his baser instincts
Hmm.
and be off, he's living his authentic life. He is what he says he is. He's a
Yeah.
vampire. But as a consequence, he goes out and kills a bunch of people. So each of them gets to make these moral choices that take them in very different paths. And both those moral choices have consequences and costs. And I hope that the audience, when they watch the movie, we're not giving them easy answers. It's not like being abstinent is better and killing people is necessarily worse. There are nuances and complexities around both
Hmm.
moral choices, and that's why casting somebody like Damien is has been so important to making this film work because not only does he make you completely believe that he's two different people and plays them, you're never in any doubt which one you're watching, but he's a super clever actor that makes you care about the moral choices that each of them make. And I hope that the audience, when they watch it, they'll be like, oh, which one would I have been? Which way would I have gone? What would I have done if I'd have been in that situation?
I can't actually answer that because, because there were traits that both of them had that I was like, that is appealing and that is very interesting. But yeah, Damien was fantastic. And I also have to shout out because I, oh man, okay, Kelly McDonald was just wow. Is all I can really say because she really goes through it in this film as she's trying to she too is just trying to hold it together. And I really just like the first time you meet her making her smoothie to that shattering, and it just was very foretelling, like, or foreshadowing. I really enjoyed that. So I guess when it came to the cast, like, what were your thoughts as you were, seeing these folks and embodying these roles?
Well, when I was casting Damien, I'd worked with him on another movie which was incredibly different to this, where he plays the nicest guy in the world. He's funny, he's charming, he's warm-hearted, he's just lovely. So I knew he could play that aspect of Peter's character. And then watching him in movies like, or in Billions, or in Wolf Hall, or Once Upon a Time in America, you can see him. He's got a real malevolent, mischievous, dark streak about him. So I knew that he was an actor who could kind of push in those two extreme directions. And then Kelly MacDonald, we've seen her in No Country for Old Men, in a
Hmm.
role that kind of, you cannot, watching that scene, you cannot breathe with the tension of it and the heartbreak and the vulnerability and the emotional depth that she brings to every part that she plays. But what I think we've not seen so much of from Kelly is her how funny she is. She's so witty and has such a sophisticated sense of humor. And this isn't a ha-ha film. It's a dark comedy about morality, but she plays it with such truth, that there are so many moments when she says something or she does something, and it's so dark you kind of almost flinch, but also so funny that you want to laugh out loud. And it's such a magic trick that she
Oh,
has
I
in.
did.
Yeah, there you go.
Like she had several deliveries. I was like, oh, oh. I'm like, all right, well, okay, that's twisted, but okay, I'm going with it. Um, And then also same to the younger actors. I just have to remember their names. Bo Bragason and Harry Baxendale. I loved them as siblings because I also love seeing their transformation. Because as you said, once they had that taste, they completely changed. But I also just really kind of liked seeing how they were bonded and they were so protective of one another.
Yeah, and casting teenagers, who don't have a huge CV, they've not done a huge amount before. It's always a leap of faith. But I think in the audition room, they were both really compelling, and in the movie, I'm so proud of the work they've both done. And Rowan, who's played by Harry, his arc is essentially a coming of age, falling in
Hmm.
love. He falls in love with the boy next door, but at the same time, which as a teenager is an ordeal in itself. But at the same time, he's coming to terms with the fact that he's a vampire who desires to suck on blood and essentially kill people, and those things are in such conflict with one another, and that drama within his arc is I guess the moral heart of the film. Which way will he go? Will he do the right thing, or will he succumb to his fate? And I think you really care for him. I watched the movie, and I'm really rooting for him, which is down to his performance. He's done an amazing job.
I was very tense during that. Will or like, will you or will you not cut? Because already, as being a queer person myself, coming out or any of that, coming to terms with that is just so much. Add on to the layer that you just find out you're a vampire. Oh my God, that was crazy. And then of course, yes, that coming of age. I it's very like rare that you get such like dark comedy with thriller horror, but it still leaves you with like a warm and fuzzy because you're like, oh, it still had kind of a nice theme to it. And yeah. And I think that's attributed to the actors. Like I really felt that in the end.
Yeah, and it's fun to tell a queer love story where the protagonist comes out, but he's not coming out as queer. He's coming out as a vampire, and that's the big ordeal that he has to cope with. So that feels like a really fun story to tell.
No, I just enjoyed it just the entire time, just going along through the story. And then of course, I have to say, as I'm watching this, something that I really enjoyed too is just how everything changed during from day to night. Just I don't know if the color palette and just how scenes were framed, and I just want to know about that choice.
Yeah, I worked
Oh.
with the cinematographer and the production designer to come up with a color palette for the show, and we wanted the color palette to be reflective of dusk. So we chose these deep indigos and greens and burnt reds and ochre yellows, and it speaks of that moment in the day where day turns to night. It's all about change, and then that represents the world of the vampires, whereas the humans in suburbia, they're all in these anodyne pastels, kind of slightly untouched by these rich, bold, bloody colors. And of course, it's a vampire movie, so the color red and the color of blood feels very significant when we come to it, and it very often speaks to a character's yearning. So these characters, when they're repressing their desires for blood, they're drawn to red, blood red objects. Like you were talking about Helen making a smoothie made out of red berries. She just can't resist it because that's what she craves most in the world. So we have a bit of fun with that. We also wanted to frame characters. We wanted to kind of tell the story that they were multifaceted. They were more than one
Mhm.
thing at any given time. So shooting characters through windows, having the reflection of something shimmering in the foreground while we see them through the window or through a gauze curtain, was something that we were after. And windows and doors have such resonance for the mythology of vampires. It felt like it tied in really nicely. So we had a lot of fun with that.
I actually enjoyed the this I guess lore, this version of vampires, and especially some of the comments in regards to the mythology that got a good laugh out of me. I was like, oh, I like this. I love something where you take something and just we're gonna just change it just a little bit, but we're gonna have fun with it. So the idea of also then seeing, Peter Radley just have this, which again, kudos to Damien, being this crappy, but also kind of meek, just general practitioner was quite, I don't know, I found that amusing. I was just like, oh man, I feel for you on that one.
Yeah, well, if you're a medical practitioner, there's no getting away from blood because
Hmm.
you deal with it all the time, and it's the thing you most crave. So how do you cope in that situation? So we had a lot of fun there. But then we were, like, during production, we were like, oh, what about garlic? So these kids, hang on, these teenagers have never been told that they're allergic to garlic, and yet it can kill them. How do you cope with that? So then we were trying to figure that out and come up with. So hopefully we've come up with a clever
I
workaround.
chuckled. I did. I was like, I love that. It was a good again, that's partially again when I went into this, I saw the trailer, I was like, okay, I'm intrigued, but I didn't know what I was going into because I've not read the source material, but I will be because I had such a good time with this film, but again, it wasn't until like maybe 3, 4 minutes I was like, oh, okay, I need to really sit up and like, oh, okay, got this. And then like these bits of like comedy, like dark comedy, but I love dark comedy. So I had some pretty guttural laughs just because I'm a twisted person, I guess. But yeah, that
Good, good. I'm glad. I'm glad.
and I have to at least because you've shot so much, well, iconic TV and also film. I'd like to know like how is it when you go from TV to film and back and forth, like when you're getting ready to shoot a project like this in terms of prep work?
Um, I think in terms of prepping, shooting, being on the floor, talking through shots, talking with actors, nothing is different
Okay.
in film and television. But the big difference is in the focus of the piece. That in when you're making a movie, it's a single story across an hour and a half or an hour and 45 minutes, and it needs to have that beginning and middle and end, whereas in TV it's much more of a slow burn, and it's an epic swathe, and it's the difference between a short story and a novel. And it feels to me that, that there's so much crossover in how, movies are consumed on televisions. People now kind of, watch series in 10-hour mega binges, in one sitting often. So I think the forms are inching closer to each other. But it's a lot of fun to tell a single story in an hour and a quarter. There's a lot of discipline that you need, that maybe when you're making a TV show, there's a bit more room for padding and tangents, whereas in a book you have to be very focused and clinical.
No, that makes sense. I get that. I have to say, because I would also be kicking myself because I'm also that person who's up until maybe a little under 2 months ago started my Doctor Who journey, literally. And so I haven't got to season three of Torchwood, but everyone's yelling at me. That's like the best season ever. So I'm excited. That's literally around the corner. But you've also directed some of the most like gut punch, but also I would also say horrific episodes of Doctor Who. And I just have to ask about Girl in the Fireplace because that like broke my heart. And I'm just curious about when it that telling that story because it was beautiful, but also those things were terrifying. Absolutely. So like when I found that I was like, oh yeah, no, he's got an eye for horror. Okay.
Well, you know, a story like that is explores time travel and the pathos of time travel. What happens, especially in exact. The Doctor, his TARDIS isn't that precise, and he often lands at the wrong time, right? And he kind of travels back in time, and then he misses the moment where he's gone back to see somebody, and suddenly their love has passed away, and he's feeling the grief for this person who's died, and he's a character who lives eternally. So those grand epic themes of life and love and loss are present in that story, but written with such a delicate touch. The writing in it is really exquisite, and then counterpointed by these really scary masked creatures with kind of very dangerous weapons. The danger and the romance in a story like that is very, very present and counterpointed, which I guess is what makes it into such a successful episode.
It's still probably my favorite. But I'm only at end of series four, but still it's very I remember it very much. But I'll go back to the Radleys to kind of wrap up because one of the other things just about this film that I really, really enjoyed just because I don't want to spoil anything. So I'll just when it came time to kind of have that chaos really break out, what was it like on set shooting that scene?
Um, yeah, it really was chaos. When you're shooting a scene with stunts and fights and blood and teeth and transformations, and we were shooting at night in the UK in the summer, so the nights get very short. So all those pressures of juggling a production really kind of really pressed down, and yet on the screen, for a view, like, viewers don't care, do they? Viewers just want to see good stuff. So it's always about making the best stuff possible, and also it's working with great actors is always fun because they surprise you, and you're kind of there saying, oh well, the scene works like this, and then they'll do something and you're like, oh wow, I never imagined that it could be this good, and they kind of dazzle you, and in this case I think Damien and Bo and Harry everybody, has really shone.
Well, Eros, I just want to thank you again so much for taking the time to speak with me about your film and to nerd out just a little bit with Doctor Who. I really appreciate so thank you very much.
Yeah, good to meet you. Thank you so much. It's been fun.